I will get us started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Alyssa Shuffman. I use she and they pronouns. I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Move Minnesota, and I help facilitate this call every month. This is the Minnesota Safe Routes to School Network call. What is the Safe Routes to School Network? We are a group of dedicated professionals from organizations and agencies across Minnesota that are working to make sure kids can walk, roll, bike, get to school safely. And we do that in a variety of ways, through partnerships, through advocacy, to support walking and bicycling to schools, and changing the built environment. And we do this because we want to make Minnesota a state where all students, no matter their background, can walk, roll, and bike to school on routes that are safe, comfortable, and convenient. I'm really excited today. Our agenda, we are going to be talking about boost grants. So Dave is going to do a great job giving us a MnDOT update. That's going to include a lot of information on boost grants, which are very timely this year, is what Dave keeps telling me. And then we're going to hear directly from some folks who have implemented around boost grants. We have Sarah Stewart from St. Paul Public Schools, Jenny Bordon from Minneapolis Public Schools, and sadly, Sophie, who was from Dakota County Public Health, is not able to join us this morning, although she had hoped to. So we'll have a little bit of a panel. We'll have discussion. I'm definitely excited to see what kinds of questions folks come up with as we are in discussion. And then we'll wrap up for the morning. So with that, I am going to kick it over to Dave to introduce himself and do the MnDOT update. And Dave, you should be able to share screen. Yes, perfect. Love it when the tech works. You're muted though. None of us can hear you, even though we can see your screen.
I'm trying to catch up with the tech myself. It's faster than I am. Hey folks, Dave Cowan here. I am the Safe Routes to School Coordinator at the Minnesota Department of Transportation. If you haven't been on the call before. And I have just a couple of updates for you today related to what's going on at MnDOT. First of all, hopefully you all have already registered for Walk to School Day, which is just a little under a week from today. I get real excited about it because I put on a mascot costume for my kid's school and dance around in a crosswalk with a crossing guard. So that's kind of that's what makes Walk to School Day fun for me. Also, there's a decent amount of I don't know, statewide media around that as well. So feel free to link into that if you want to. I think our press release about Walk to School Day is going out later today. And then a reminder that we have a photo contest here at Minnesota Safe Routes to School. When you're out there at your Walk to School Day events, grab a camera, take some pictures and submit them on our Facebook page, Minnesota Safe Routes to School. So the other things that I'm planning to talk about today are boost grants, which have already been introduced. And if we have a little bit of time at the end, I wanted to walk through the Minnesota Safe Routes to School Resource Center, which we talk about often on here, the number of resources that are available there, but maybe give you all insider's scoop. And then Alyssa, just to make sure I'm right here on timing, I have 15 minutes, or is it 20?
You have 15 minutes, yep.
15 minutes. Let's see if I can do it. Well, if you haven't applied for a boost grant before, you might be wondering by its name what it is. These are implementation grants, and they were named boost grants because we intended them to help people boost their Safe Routes to School programs. And it really means that in every community, a boost grant looks a little bit different. There really hasn't been a uniform project that has come through. We use it as a chance for you to take your Safe Routes to School plans and tell us what's going to get more people walking and biking safely in your communities. And we hope to fund as many of those as we can. It is important to note, though, that boost grants are not engineering, they're not infrastructure, they are programmatic in nature, and they are not permanent fixtures in your roads and streets. So that's important to note. Those are not eligible. And then before I dive into what the boost solicitation looks like, I wanted to mention something that I mentioned on the last call, which is if you are local public health wondering, how you can make boost grants work for the communities that are in your counties, our visualizing tool is a great way to do that. you can jump in on there. And I think, Alyssa, you were going to share a link here with this to check out which communities in your area have safe routes to school plans. Those plans oftentimes have non-infrastructure or programmatic strategies inside of them. It's a great way to reconnect with communities that you've worked with in the past, or if you haven't worked with them, to introduce yourself through this boost grant opportunity, and maybe suggest to them that a bicycle fleet that was a part of their safe routes to school plan might be it might be worth applying to this funding opportunity. I'm glad that Sarah and Jenny are here today to add some flesh to the idea of what a boost grant is. But I encourage you also to go to our website, where we have this resource, which is just a list of some non-infrastructure programmatic ideas that you might fund with boost funding, and that includes everything from books or clubs, bike racks, encouragement programs, bike fleets, all those kinds of things are on here. And those are super generic. And what I love about the Boost program is that we actually end up with far more interesting and creative applications that come in. A few examples are, pedal power. It used to be just at Pillsbury here in Minneapolis, and was doing awesome programming at Pillsbury, and wanted to expand their work into additional low-income schools in the area. So we funded their work to have a bicycle fleet and some staff time to do that. Rochester, a few years back, funded walking school bus leaders and the materials it takes to kind of get walking school buses off of the ground. And then I put St. Paul and Minneapolis on here, but I'm going to leave that for Sarah and Jenny to talk about. But really just really creative, thoughtful approaches to getting students walking and biking more, coming through our Boost application process. I mentioned some ideas before, but crossing guards, student safety patrol, the materials to do that. Maybe you've been thinking about revamping your arrival and dismissal. Some of the items in that wouldn't count as infrastructure necessarily on school grounds. Bike fleets, racks, trailers, walking route for youth map is something that Minneapolis did many years ago with, I think, implementation funds, but Jenny can speak to that. Maybe building out your walking school buses or your bus stop and walks. All of those are possibilities, and I'm sure there's even more out there. Every solicitation we get to hear about new things. So please don't let those ideas limit you in what you might be thinking about for your community. But just to touch on a couple of the need to knows. First off, this is the short version of some of the webinars that we do for folks that are thinking about applying. So if you walk away from today and you still have questions, this coming Monday, we have a Boost webinar, and that information is available on the Boost Grant homepage that Alyssa shared. But a couple of need to knows. We've moved the deadline up on these grants relative to prior years. So we're looking for applications to be turned in by November 30th at 5 p.m. That is with a hope that our scoring committee can score those quickly and we can get contracts in place as soon as possible, as these are the deadline for spending these funds is a lot quicker than it has been in the past. So you have until June of 2023 to be able to spend those funds. So we're really trying to move the timeline up so that we can review those applications, get contracts in place, and have people be able to make the kinds of purchases that they deem part of their grant. The amount of funding we have available is about $250,000. The range there of grants needs to be between $5,000 and $50,000. Something that I'm sure Jenny and Sarah can speak to, and I hope you would take into consideration in applying, is that if you're going to apply, it's worth applying for a lot. a $5,000 grant, in my opinion, doesn't match the additional red tape that you have to go through to be in a contract agreement with the Department of Transportation here. So you might consider beefing that up a little bit to make it worth your time and energy. I think I covered everything on that slide. So where can you find the application? The application is an online application. So you would be filling that out at the website link that Alyssa shared. But I know a lot of you like to have those questions ahead of time without having to flip through and all of the online applications. So we put a downloadable Word document on that application that you can grab to fill out offline as you're kind of seeking some of the information that you need in order to fill out the application well. And a few of those things to be thinking about now, if you're considering submitting an application in November, is understanding who's eligible for it. You know, schools, public and private, and charters, all eligible, school districts, city and county governments, federally recognized tribes, regional development commissions, MPOs, and nonprofits, basically anyone and everyone here in terms of organizations is an eligible applicant for these non-infrastructure funds. And a little peek at the timeline. Yeah, as I mentioned, the applications are due at the end of November. We really hope to turn that around and announce awards in December so that we can enter into contracts as early as January of 2023, which should give you around 6 months to be able to make the purchases necessary for your boost grants. What do I want to say about that? It's a tight timeline. It's a tight turnaround. We recognize that. And so on our end, we'll be doing as much as we can to be flexible and to be fast inside of the constraints of MnDOT's policies around grant making. Some things you can be thinking about right now in terms of the application. If you want to get into the dirty details, join me on Monday. I'll get into the dirty details of all the things, but I pulled out like some of the higher scoring aspects of the application for you all to start thinking about now that I was just going to discuss briefly here. The first is equity. Equity is at the center of our strategic plan, and we have continued to try and update our process and our scoring to reflect that. And one of the ways we do that is through our Student Transportation Equity for Priority Populations tool. If you filled out a boost grant in the past, it looks a little different now. We used to have an Excel spreadsheet. Now we have a fancy looking map where you can look up your school, and it uses our equity score as a function of the amount of points you will receive in this category. So we do ask you to look that score up and include it in your application for each school that's included on the list. And if you find that your school isn't on a list, you can reach out to us. We have a calculator that can help you do it if you're working with perhaps a private school that doesn't have all of the data that's needed in order to calculate the equity score. And that's 40 points of the application. So if you're working in a school district or you're working, you know, multi-county level, sometimes you can proactively go in and take a look at what schools have high equity scores and consider putting them forward for for an application prior to maybe other schools that wouldn't score as well. We get the question about how this pans out for like Metro versus Greater Minnesota, and I think it's a good one. It's worth saying that one of the additional ways that we slice the applications as they come in is they're sorted by city size or city classification. So smaller towns are kind of in a pool with smaller towns, larger communities are in a pool with larger communities, and then their equity scores are applied. We're also looking at the opportunity to get more students walking and biking safely. So we want to understand what percentage of the students live within a walkable distance of the school, what percentage of the students are offered busing. Sometimes I think folks struggle to get this information from their transportation departments, and we do look for accurate information related to these questions. So it's something that you might want to start talking to people about now, is the answers to those questions. And then the project background. This is maybe obvious, but this scores highly. We want to understand what the issue is in your community, and that's looked very differently, as Sarah and Jenny will get at in a bit. That problem, preventing students from walking and biking, is what we want to hear about on the front end. And for those of you with Safe Routes to School plans, sometimes this is really easy to pull forward. It's already in there. You can cut and paste your problem statement from there. But then when you get into the proposed solution, you really want to ensure that there's a relationship between these two. If the solution has nothing to do with the problem statement, it doesn't score as well with our scoring committee. They want to make sure that the solution both addresses the problem statement and also thinks about equity. So there's a very specific call out there for how your solution to the problem is going to be implemented in an equitable way. So you need to start, I guess, queuing up that kind of sequence of thought. And then finally, how are you going to know it was successful? How are you going to evaluate the project at the end or during its implementation to understand whether or not it's working? And then finally, in terms of one of like the bigger aspects of the application is your Safe Routes to School team. We all know that communities that have robust Safe Routes to School teams that are comprehensive from various organizations have a better chance of succeeding. And particularly when each of those team members has a role in implementation. So we want to know who your Safe Routes to School team is. Again, if you've already completed a Safe Routes to School plan, this is the kind of thing that can be fairly straightforward to pull from that plan and just ensure, maybe if it's if the plan is 3 or 4 years old, that the people that are listed in there as your Safe Routes to School team are still around and willing to be contributing to Safe Routes to School locally. So that's the short version of Boost here. Everything you need to apply is on the website that we've been sharing via the link. All the things that I talked about, everything from the Word document to the Student Transportation Equity for Priority Populations tool. It's all available there. And I think I actually hit 15 minutes right there, Alyssa. And so I'm going to hold off on the Resource Center until another time.
That sounds great, Dave. If we have a few extra minutes at the end of the call, we can talk about it then too.
Sure. Are there any questions I can answer for folks?
I did get one question over messages about where to find the link to the webinar info, and just want to add that the Boost homepage, grant homepage that I put in the chat, if you scroll down, that's where you can find the link to the webinar for next week.
Thank you.
Well, not seeing any folks come off mute or raise hands. Thanks, Dave, for all that info. That was a lot of info. I'm sure people, especially if this is their first time considering a Boost grant, are digesting all of it. But thanks for providing kind of some immediate ways for folks to have any follow-up questions answered on next week's webinar. With that, I am very excited to transition to the next part of our call, which is talking to people who have actually done Boost grants. I'm excited. I'm sure I will learn a lot today too. And before I get started, just want to encourage folks as we go through, if you have questions, comments, please put those in the chat. We have some questions that we're going to ask, but definitely want to hear from all of you on your questions. And also, share your wisdom. I know there, as Jill is fond of saying, there's a lot of collective wisdom on these calls. So with that, I will ask maybe first Sarah and then Jenny to introduce yourselves, maybe just who you are, where you work, and kind of your very brief background with Safe Routes to School.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Stewart, she, her pronouns, and I work with the St. Paul Public Schools as the Safe Routes to School lead. And I've been doing that for almost 3 years now. It was a new position created actually with the MnDOT grant. So that's kind of how I came to be here, and I work with schools all across our district on safe routes.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jenny Bordon, she, her. I'm the active living coordinator for Minneapolis Public Schools. And in that role, I work quite a bit on safe routes to school. I'm part of the nutrition department, and our mission is to give children, we try to feed children quality food and then give them opportunities for active living, a lot of which comes through safe routes to school. I have been working on safe routes to school in Minneapolis Public Schools for about a decade.
Amazing. Cool. Well, thanks for introducing yourselves. I will kind of kick us off with a question about, boost grants. What was your, I don't know exactly how many projects you have applied for boost grants, but if you're thinking of one project or a set of specific projects, thinking about like, what was your project, if you could share that, and then thinking about, how or why did you decide on that as the thing you were going to apply for a boost grant? Jenny, maybe I'll kick it to you first.
Sure. Well, we try to apply for every grant that we hear about. So we've received a few boost grants. We have 70 schools in our district, so there's a lot of work to be done, I would say. Some of the stuff that we have applied for through boost grants, bike fleets are a big one, either for district-wide efforts or for specific schools, bike storage. Listening to Dave, we've done crosswalks in the streets for some schools. Our city likes those state law stop for all pedestrians and a crosswalk signs. We've done walking bus support with stop paddles and vests. And then some of our more innovative work, we created a curriculum in our health classes in middle school to address street harassment, and also had a team of high schoolers helping us engage on that topic and advise the curriculum project and also create resources for it. And currently we also are in a boost grant doing, I think, more innovative work with having an international teaching assistant from Mexico as part of one of our immersion schools, as the Safe Routes to School coordinator, developing a Safe Routes to School program in a particular school. So I think that was the question, right? Like, what are some of the things you've done? Did I answer it?
Sarah,
do you want to jump in?
Sure.
Is it helpful if I restate the question?
No, it's good. I think I got it. We've done 2 different boost grants since I've started. One was working with, so we have a high school that has a bike mechanic program class called Project Bike Tech. And the school wanted to be able to open a kind of community bike shop and like as an after school program. Which is a great idea, but another reason that it's so great for Safe Routes to School is because they wanted to be able to repair and maintain our district bike fleet. I know a lot of it's a challenge to figure out how to maintain bike fleets, and so this is such a great fit. And so we applied and kind of got all the supplies and things we needed to be able to set that school up to open their after school program to repair bikes. And also just set ourselves up for a more sustainable kind of way to maintain our existing bikes. The other thing we applied for this year is kind of simpler, but also really important, I think. We are installing bike parking at 4 elementary schools that currently don't have any bike parking and haven't for a long time. And we're actually buying new bikes to replace the existing bikes in our bike fleet, which is now 6 years old. And so the bikes they're doing great, but like they have a lot more issues. And we have one traveling bike fleet in the district, and so it's used by about 1,200 kids a year. So you can imagine how much wear and tear there is on those bikes. So it'll be good to have fresh bikes for our fleet. And I would just say, like, how do we decide it? I think the bike shop was an existing idea that I was able to kind of help lift. So it was just kind of by building relationships with people in the district who already had, energy and were already doing really great things, and just supporting that. And the other project, the bike parking, that I think is just comes from like being out at schools and talking to people and just recognizing when there's a need and keeping track of it so that we can try to fill that need. Those are the things.
Alyssa, I was going to maybe jump in because I didn't actually talk about how we decided. And so I'm a huge fan of Safe Routes to School planning, which I know the planning is also open. And I'll just be honest, like when I came into this work, I didn't come in as a planner. And I was like, why are we talking so much? We need to be doing. And I've become a real convert to plans. I like to think of them as our dreams on paper. And so we looked to our plan as a guide. We had 5 priorities. One was universal bike education. Another was to address street harassment. Another was supporting walking and biking field trips. And there are 2 others. And we, in our planning, we really tried to engage families and students, historically underserved communities, Black and Brown families and low income families, and really hear from them what their barriers were, and then talk about what their dreams were. And so I think our plan really does align with like what the problems we heard around access to bicycles, access to education, supervised activities, parents concerned about safety, and then our solutions kind of fell from those. So we've built that into our planning, but I wouldn't let not have. And then when schools do plans, I always go, doing a plan is a whole bunch of work. You are trying to convince a school to sign up to do work. Like I always say, you won't get any money and you're actually signing yourself up to do work. So really think about if you want to do that. And if you do, like I'm going to go to those schools and say, what do you want? What do you need? What was in your plan? Because that seems only, right and fair. And then, so we go to our plan, we go to other folks' plans, but then general, like we look at equity scores, see if there's some folks that are scoring high. Again, that seems fair and right to reach out to those schools specifically and see about their barriers and hopes and dreams. And then we put it out to all schools always. So we have a bi-weekly newsletter that anybody can sign up for. So it's staff, families, other interested folks. So some people that are just into like the wellness things that we do and partners. And it's in there right now. And it says, do you have an idea? Do you have a dream? Contact me. And I try to find a way to say yes to everybody that wants to do, because they are asking to do work. So we try to say yes to that stuff.
Oh, I think what's striking me most initially about this is just, kind of an echo of what Dave said earlier, is there are just so many different ways and ideas to think about like what a boost grant can do for a district or a school or a community. And there's just like so much creativity happening. It's very cool. I would love to hear, our next question is about lessons learned, which feels very appropriate for a school-based work that we're all doing. But just thinking about as you were applying for these different boost grants and going through the process of like visioning the application, receiving funding, implementing your project, just like, what have you learned? What were your big lessons learned?
I can go. I think, I'm fairly new in this position, and it's a fairly new position. And so for me, a little bit echoing what Jenny said about having a newsletter, but just getting out there and talking to as many people as I can has been so important. Looking at those plans is one thing, but like having those relationships and knowing kind of where there's energy and where people like can see this too and want to work with you is another thing. So like just spending, I have been talking to a lot of people, and like some of that has been reaching out to schools about potential Safe Routes to School plans. That's how I developed some relationships with schools that are getting bike packing this year. Some of it is, I go to like the wellness champion training for the district and just say, hey, I'm here and here's some things I can offer you. And also we have this boost grant. And, this year I'm hearing some ideas from that, and going to talk to the PE teachers when they have a big meeting, just like going out there and trying to just be a presence in any way that I can, so people know that this is out there and that I can support them. And if they have the energy to reach out to me, I'm going to try my best to help them. and I do. I think the application itself is not hard. It does take some time and it, some planning to make sure you get through all of the steps and collect all the data you need and all the letters and everything. So just trying to like pace yourself with that is important. And then implementing, it's been interesting with the pandemic and like everything that has followed. That I just think there's always unexpected things, but I think, just recognizing, like Dave said, like MnDOT is a huge bureaucracy. Schools and school districts are huge bureaucracies. So like, know that you're going to have to work through that and try to like scale your projects accordingly and plan your time accordingly. And the support that's going to be needed for schools to get through that, because that is a lot to take on. So like, how can you make sure that that's part of your process and that whatever you're doing is going to make that worth it? And I think it is. I mean, I'm not complaining about it. It's just part of what you have to do. Those are some of my, and then the other thing, the online application, don't do it on the last day, because your Word document and the online application are going to line up pretty well, but not perfectly. And you just need a little time to make sure that you can like get everything in there the way you want it. Give yourself an extra couple of days.
Mm-hmm. Yes, as someone who has applied for a fair amount of grants myself, yes, leaving it till the last hour is never quite
never
right.
Good.
Well, planning is already a theme in our discussion. Jenny, do you want to jump in and talk about your lessons learned?
Yeah, some things. I mean, one thing that I have found is we have a Safe Routes to School team, like a district level Safe Routes to School team with some internal folks and external partners in the city and public works and in the health department and at the county level too. And that is just so valuable. So if you don't have one of those and you think you can get one set up just kind of as a long-term goal, I think you won't be sorry. We meet for an hour every month. And so when these grant opportunities come up, it's it's already structured that we have the time to talk about it. And then we have the answers to pretty much all those questions on the application, because that's what they're asking about the team. And then with each project, then we'll invite other folks to join the team too. So that's probably an early step that I would do, to just reach out to folks and see if they'll help us with this project, depending, if it's a principal of a specific school, it might be, or whatever it is. I would say that boosting grants and planning are my answer to a lot of the questions I get. So we hear stuff about streets, and folks are really worried about their streets. And, we might look for something short term, but then I'm always like, the state puts out these planning applications, and here's some examples of schools that have done it. And here are the hundreds of thousands of dollars of changed infrastructure that's going in near that school. And then boost grants too. It might be after this deadline, but I'll say there's usually a boost grant every year. So you can be starting to think about what you would want to do. So you kind of build capacity or build like interest kind of all year long, even when they're not in a boost grant, even if there's not a impending application. I agree with a lot of what Sarah said for just lessons learned. Like I think Dave, we're in the guide, it really says think about buying stuff for this round. And I would just say that for sure. Like I wouldn't try to put staff time in this, or that things that you're going to be, A is dependent on, B is dependent on C. So I would just have A, so sometimes like we've bought like a trailer and we've wanted to hire somebody to paint it, but I just think get that trailer bought and fund the painting a different way. So that's where like try not to have things that rely on other things, but to be super organized. Your scope of work, so is your work plan that will go into the contract. Get all your whole team on board with that, and then just use that as your way to keep track of getting the work done as you meet with folks. This happened to me, and I think it's effective. Make your folks a little bit afraid of MnDOT. When we had our first grant, and it was a very veteran finance person that we sat down with, and she's like, "We will get audited. Everything needs to be perfect." And the way you wrote up, we had some evaluation support. We just wrote it like you'd write like for a like a contractor or whatever, we just like $150 an hour. They're like, we will not bill MnDOT. We will bill them exactly what those people make. So you need to change, you need to change that. And so that, I think that's helpful. I say I will take care of it, but just understand that it's going to be a slower process. And it won't seem easy, but it is worth it. So I think that's kind of helpful. And I kind of like, I'll deal with MnDOT, so don't worry, but we are scared of them because they're going to audit us. So we need to keep our stuff perfect. And then with this one too, I would say, you can't, it always takes longer to get, at least for us in our big district, it takes us a really long time to get a contract in place and then to get budget codes. And so even though it says no work can be done, you can do the work that you're not buying stuff for. Like, it doesn't mean that you can't start working on that. I mean, you could start working on your project right now. It's just like, you can't really work on your billable stuff, but you can get started. So I would just kind of get started with everything that I could get done, because it's kind of, will be fast and furious with this short timeline for this particular one. Other ones, like the one we're working on this year, we have a long timeline, and that's why we put something a little bit harder in there, I think, with a new person coming in to lead Safe Routes to School when the person isn't, they're not familiar with Safe Routes to School. So yeah, so those are some lessons learned.
Yeah. Jenny, I really like what you said about the timeline and the sort of the contingencies, that like, don't do A, which is dependent on B, which is dependent on C, when you're only going to have somewhere between like 4 and 6 months, depending on when you get your contract signed to spend all the money. Because
you'll be lucky to have 4 months. I'm just going to say, at least in our district, some people are lying on their feet. Like we've had some nonprofits that we work with, and they're like, oh, we just blah, blah, blah. It's just like they can get their stuff really fast. But if you are in a organization like we are, then it's harder. The other thing that I would say is kind of a lesson learned with the street harassment work. Like that was, we heard it from students. We also heard stuff about personal safety, and we thought, it went into our plan as a goal, us not knowing what we would even do, like how to even address it, but try to start smaller. And then we really took their call of, what would boost their efforts, and like talk to, we're like, well, there we have a perfect one, a goal on our plan of a top 5 priority that we haven't started. And we just talked to people, but really we thought about, because I think there's a lot of different entities. And we thought about, well, who are we? Because oftentimes we want to say, you do that, and you do that, and you do, like the city needs to do this, and the state needs to do this, but we were like, what can we do? Like, we are the school district. So we're like, well, we have kids, a captive audience, 6 or 7 hours a day. So like, we educate. So that is what we do, versus like, so that what we didn't come up with like a plan to make the police do this, or a plan to make the city do street lighting. And I just think it's a way for us to think about like, well, what can I do? And then you uplift champions too, because there are people out there saying, I want to do it, I want to do it, I want to do it. And you can push a little bit, certainly we push, but I think we all should spend time to think, well, what can I do? What can my entity do?
Mm-hmm. Jenny, I see in the chat there's a related question about the middle school street harassment curriculum, and whether that's been aligned with standards and shared at teachers conferences, or I guess like some interest from folks in knowing how they might learn more about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. It was developed by our health teachers. So yeah, it was aligned with all the standards, and it does have some communication pieces for the families to use, but it isn't, it's really it's a quite internal. People ask for it. Somebody just asked for it recently, and I'm like, I'll send it, but I think that you have to probably be a trained health teacher to really be able to use it. There's a lot of, obviously a lot of education that goes into becoming a teacher and being able to create safe spaces and have sensitive and difficult conversations, and create like places where it's a very interactive and conversational curriculum. But yes, it is aligned to our standards.
Cool. So if folks have other follow-up questions, they could reach out to you on that. Cool.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I do also want to, it looks like Sarah's already answered the question in the chat, but someone asked about whether or not there were any places online about where they can learn more about the after school bike repair project. And Sarah, you shared a link. It looks like the program or the curriculum that's used, and noted that, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, so the school has struggled to like realize their vision exactly, because partly due to staffing shortages, like people are being pulled and to do all sorts of other things, including the teacher that teaches project bike tech. They upped his hours, but then he was like doing lunch duty and subbing and like not able to do all the work that he needs to do to make it like this big vision. And it's something they're still working towards. So they have been doing a little bit of like bike repair of like, staff at the school, and they've been working on our bikes, but they haven't like done their big launch yet. So they don't have like a web presence for it. But I'm happy to talk more about it or connect you. The teacher is super busy, so he's hard to get in touch with, but to try to connect you to him a little bit too. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah, for sharing a little bit more about that. I'm going to keep us moving because we've gone through 2 questions thus far, and I appreciate folks putting things in the chat. They're really great questions. We wanted to just take a moment to think about policy systems environment, PSE change. Dave said at the top of the call, like, these are not infrastructure grants, right? Like, this is not about changing the streetscape around the school in that particular way. As we're thinking about infrastructure, it's about all the other 5 E's. And so thinking about, how that relates to PSE change in your project, I think would be, or in your projects, since you've both done multiples, might be helpful. Jenny, you want to go first this go around?
Sure. Well, and I think if you have a Safe Routes to School plan, that can really help you, because I think your plan will be thinking about policy systems and environment change. We probably think most about systems and environment, like on our team. And so like adding bike fleets to a school will change the environment of the school, but also we've developed the systems like that can make it work. I think also being able to that piece about like think who you are, that you probably can change your system. Whatever piece you have, that's probably where you're going to have the best chance. Some schools, like if they're even when it's just aimed at a particular school, we think about it broader as well. So for example, when we put bike storage in at a school, we made sure that we document, so we're changing the environment of that school, but we kind of want bigger reach. We want stuff that's going to last and reach a lot of kids, right? So we really made sure we documented it so that other people are like, how do I get that? How do I get that? We can send an easy link of here's how you do bike storage. And we're thinking in the same way about the Safe Routes to School person, the International Teaching Assistant, which is like a super cool program that gets folks in our schools from other countries. And it's a very cool program. So we are trying to document to see if it's replicable for other schools to do, because it's somewhat affordable and it's something that some schools accidentally muted myself as I'm talking. So we're trying to create, see if we can create a system that can be replicable, but also the stuff that this person has developed is going to be shared with the other immersion schools. So it's for a particular school, but it will benefit, and then also just documenting so that we can share more easily. So those are some of the ways that we think about changing the systems and the environments.
Yeah, Jenny, I love what you said about replicability, since that like applies to like, is it a policy? How can we replicate it? Is this a system? How can we replicate it? Is it an environmental change? How can we replicate it? So,
yeah.
Sarah, what about you?
Well, I think when we did our the after school bike shop, that is about addressing a systemic issue, which is how do we maintain our bike fleet. We want to provide bike education. It's expensive to maintain bikes with bike shops. We can't rely on having funding to do that. How do we address that. So this is kind of putting a new system in place that will allow us to kind of have bike fleets and maintain them and grow. That's the goal too, is we wanted to be able to get more fleets. So that's a system change. The bike parking is an environmental change. You know, we're working on that. I agree with what Jenny said too, just about planning, because I think it helps to identify those kind of bigger changes that will really impact schools. We are working right now on a little strategic planning just for the school district. You know, we have this policy plan for the city that's kind of helpful in some ways, but also kind of esoteric and not, I don't know, like I need something more specific and concrete that's really focused on what we can change, like Jenny said, like those systems and environments. And even the bike parking, like knowing that we had 4 elementary schools that I know of that didn't have any bike parking at all, and having been out at school sites, I want to do an assessment of bike parking in the district, because I know we don't have the quantity or quality of parking that we really need. And then I'll have this thing that I can then use, either Boost or other ways. Like, I think it's identifying those needs and then like saying, okay, well, Boost is a good fit for this, or like I could go somewhere else and try to get resources for this. But just like taking the time to like really know what are the things you want to do that are really going to have those big impacts, before you know, instead of just being just reactive to what the funding coming to you is, saying, okay, well, we have these big goals. Oh, look, here's Boost. We can do this, and we can achieve this goal that we have with this Boost grant, or with whatever other kind of resources that you're able to find. I think that's like we're trying to. That's where I want to get, is to get to that point where we've kind of outlined those things and can really go for our goals that we've really thought about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sarah, I think the thing that you said that really resonated with me was this idea of like, let's not follow the money, right? It can be very easy to be like, oh, there's money, let's follow the money, let's like figure out a thing. We can't pass on resources, but to really be approaching that from a place of like, we already know what we want and what we need, and we figure out how that fits within what we're trying to do. Is like, yeah, it's long-term work. It's really hard to get to that place. So exciting that you're doing that. This is the question I am most excited to ask you both, which is what was something you saw, heard, or experienced while implementing a Boost grant or some Boost grants that was inspiring to you? We love a cute kid story, no pressure, but Sarah, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I was trying to think of how I could be really specific with this. But so with the bike shop, I think I was just talking with the teacher, earlier this week, who works on this, and one of the things he said is so great. Like, he's been teaching this bike maintenance stuff in class, and the kids love it. They get a lot out of it. Some of them go on to work on bike shops and all of that. But like, for them to get real bikes, like call it real bikes, because they've been using like these brand new bikes, basically working on and learning the skills on those, but then they get these real bikes, and they know they're going to be used, and they're going to be used by students, and they get to work on them, and like they're just like the pride and investment and ownership of that is so great for them, and then getting that extra real hands-on experience like that really helps build their skills, like just like and then we get our bikes repaired. Like what a like virtuous thing, you know, like it's great in so many ways. Everyone's kind of winning in this, and that's it's just like, that's exactly what you want, right, out of a project. And then I don't know, the bike parking to me is like, it seems like such a small thing, but like at one school, like they've been putting bikes in their office and like tripping over them, and like just knowing that we're going to put bike parking in, and the kids are going to be able to lock their bikes up, and you know, just to be able to provide that. Or at another school, it was a parent that reached out, and they're locking their bikes to like trees and things. like there's just like this real need, and it's like something we can easily address and like very quickly make a big difference for people getting to our schools. So I think that's great. And then our bike fleet, like I said, we have one fleet across our whole district, our district of 30 whatever thousand students, and besides the school-based fleets that we have. But that like 1,200 kids a year is like what it's programmed from May all the way till December, or April all the way to December this year, basically constantly. And like that is such a joyful thing, you know, like using the bike fleet is such a joyful thing. And it's so great that with this relatively small investment, we can, you know, make do something really great for so many students. Those are the things that make me happy.
Thanks for sharing that, Sarah. Jenny?
Yeah, I was thinking the traveling bike fleet's amazing. Like people, and when you're at it, like the community comes by, a school nurse came by once and she's like, this is the only field trip that I think is valuable. And she's like, and you see like kids come to school and they learn how to ride a bike, and then their parents maybe get bikes, everybody gets bikes, and that can just like trickle up through the whole family. And then I pulled a couple, we had support from our internal evaluation folks with this curriculum. So I can just read like what a couple kids said. One said, I could write a whole essay on why I like this unit, but I'll keep it short. It's a topic that happens to people too much, and those people normally don't know what to do about it. Another kid said, I think it taught me and made me more comfortable with being outside alone and gave me some skills to be more prepared to stand up for myself. So a couple. The other thing that we learned that was really great, I didn't mention this in our projects, but one of those grants was through COVID. And so we just got COVID supplies, and we have in our traveling bike fleets, it's usually shared helmets, but we bought like 1 jillion helmets so that each kid could have their own helmet to use while the bike fleet is at their school. And teachers love that. So that is continued because it's just like you put the tape in their name because it's their 2 weeks and you put their name on it, and then they don't have to keep refitting them. It's just, it's safer and they get more time on bike. So it was kind of a surprise win from a terrible pandemic.
Mm-hmm. We will take the silver linings. Cool. Well, we've got just 5 minutes left. So our last question, I feel like both of you have already answered in so many ways. But if you have any closing advice for someone new to the Boost grant process, if you have like a 1 or 2 things that you feel like would be really important for folks to take away as we close out, Jenny?
Yeah, do it, apply. That's what I would say, like, go for it. You have nothing to lose. Like, and I think about one of our biggest grant successes was one we didn't get. It was like, we were gonna apply to do all this stuff, but we partnered with folks to make the application. And that's our summer school program now, and our guys and gems, like they love the idea that they found a way to make it happen. So even I hope you get funded, but even if you don't get funded, once you put your dreams on paper, is so powerful. So do it. That is my advice.
Great advice, Jenny. Sarah?
I was going to say something similar, which is like, it's not wasted time to apply. It's worth it because you develop the relationships. I mean, I'm talking about this current round now, and like, I don't know, there's a couple things we might put in, but like maybe we won't, and maybe we just have this great idea and we have another way to do it. And like I've talked to new people and we like have some really cool ideas, and that like that's great. Like that's a win. And even if we don't get funding, like hopefully we can make something happen. So yeah, I just really echo what Jenny said. Go out and talk to people, learn what they want to do, where the energy is, and think about how you can help, Boost or otherwise.
Well, thank you both for being so generous with your time, with your experience, with your knowledge today. I learned a lot. I feel like folks hopefully will continue to follow up if they have any other questions, either with Dave or with the two of you. Thanks for being willing to follow up with folks on some specifics. So I think with that, I will move us towards closing. And Dave, you're going to have to talk about the Resource Center another day, I think, if you're okay with that. I see a thumbs up from Dave. Well, let's see. With that, I'm going to see if I can share those slides one more time. You're not over to Dave. We only have a couple announcements to close us out. Just a reminder that the Safe Routes to School National Summit is in November. If you are interested in checking that out, I think registration is now open. I can't remember where it is, but it's not here in Minnesota. It would require travel. And then just wanted to.
It's actually virtual.
Oh,
the
great.
virtual conference.
Great, thanks, Dave. Even better. And then just wanted to preview our next couple of calls. So in November, we're going to be talking about accessibility and adaptive bicycling in Safe Routes to School. I'm very excited about the lineup of things that we're going to cover in November. And then later this month, folks on the email list will get a link to our annual survey. We'll be asking folks to respond to that by sometime in November, so that on our December call, we can review our annual survey results. And Dave will do a deep dive on the Resource Center or someone else. So that's our next couple calls. Hope to see you around as you all are available. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of your October fall day. Sorry about the noise. That's my dog. Take care, everybody.